Okay, so if you remember, this week we've been dealing with singular and plural nouns. Okay, so I'm going to start off with that, and then I'm going to add some elements to this as we get into possessives. Okay, so if you remember, I made a chart, and it said singular and then plural. And if you remember, we said that singular I could put one in front of it, and plural I could put two or more in front of it. Okay? So in other words, child, one child, but two children. Okay? I don't think I did any compounds with you, so let me show you what that looks like. Sister-in-law. Remember, compound just means I have more than one of something. In this case, it's more than one word that makes up a noun. Okay? So when I make this plural, it's going to be two, not sister-in-laws, but two sisters-in-law. Okay? We have others like attorney general. Whoops, kind of going over there. And the plural form would be two attorneys general. And sometimes now, some books will say it's acceptable to say two attorney generals, but normally we're going to put the plural form on the principal word. Okay? Let's say we had editor-in-chief. There's no hyphen with editor-in-chief, by the way. So I would do two editors-in-chief. Okay? And you remember we also did letters and numbers, and we said if we had a capital M, that was Maui. So we would do capital M apostrophe S. If we had the year 2000, and I would say in the year 2000, well, let me try this. Let me try something like, so I can make it plural. How about 1990, and we do 1990s. I think that's what we did last time. Remember, we're not going to put an apostrophe on those, but we will put apostrophes on lowercase letters. Okay, when we're making them plural. Okay, so now we're going to add to this chart a little bit. So I'm going to erase this, so hopefully you've been taking notes and have written some of this down. Okay, if not, you might have to pause it for a second here while you take the rest of this down. So now I've got to make my chart again because I won't have enough room if I don't. Okay, hopefully you can see the whole board in the screen here. Okay, so I'm going to write singular, plural, singular, possessive. I'll do it like this so we have more room. And plural, possessive. Okay? So let's start out with some simple words here and carry them all the way through, okay? So we did boy before, right? So one boy or two boys, right? Now, when I make something possessive, here's one way you can think about it. If any of you know Spanish, in Spanish, the possessive form is actually an of phrase. So you would say, for example, mother of the bride, and you would say it as a phrase like that. Whereas in English, we'd shorten it and we'd say bride's mother, and then we would put the apostrophe S on the noun. Okay, so it's different from other languages. So think of it as an of phrase. It's always going to be followed by a noun when you have possessive form. So think of it like, what if I said the toy of the boy? I know that sounds kind of weird, but if it's the toy of the boy, then it's the boy's toy, right? And you'll notice here I've got boy, apostrophe S, and then I told you that when you have a possessive form, it's going to be followed by a noun. Might have an adjective or something in between, but you're going to have something that belongs to the boy, the toy of the boy, okay? In this one, it's going to be plural, right? So it's the toys of the boys. So in this case, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the word boys in its plural form. Then what you want to do is look at that form. If the plural form ends in an S, then when you make the possessive, you just add the apostrophe to the end. So it would look like this, boys, toys. Okay? But you'll notice here, again, in my plural form, when I don't have any possession going on, there are not going to be any apostrophes on this column, only when I'm doing something where it's showing possession. Okay? Let me take some other types of things that you could get. Let's say that we're talking about week. Okay, so 2 weeks, there's the plural form. And sometimes we'll say something like, they owe me 1 week's pay. So that is the pay of 1 week, right? So I'm going to write that like this. Week, and then we write it apostrophe S, pay. So this is the pay of 1 week. If it's 2 weeks' pay, it's the pay of 2 weeks. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I look at my plural form. If it ends in S in the plural, then to make it possessive, all I have to do is add the apostrophe. Okay? Let's try child. Now we had child on the chart a few minutes ago, but I erased it. So let me put it on again so I can show you how this would work. So 1 child, 2 children, and then we could say the child's bike. Okay, so it's the bike of the child. So I'm going to write child, then apostrophe S, bike. And the big thing, I'm trying to remind you that anytime I have the possessive form, I've got a noun here. Okay? The next thing, it's going to be the bikes of the children. Okay, so I'm going to write the word children. Okay, now, this plural form does not end in S. And when the plural form does not end in S, then we've got to add it. So it's going to be apostrophe S, bikes. Okay, so the key is when you're looking at that plural form, if it already has an S on it, just add the apostrophe. If the plural form does not end in an S, then we're going to add the apostrophe S to it. So let's try sister-in-law now. Sister-in-law. And if I have 2 of them, sorry my W looks bad. If I have 2 of them, it's going to be 2 sisters, and sorry I can't fit this very well, but there's my W. 2 sisters-in-law. So the plural is right here on this principal word. Anytime you have a prepositional phrase as part of the compound, the principal word is going to be a different word. Just like editor-in-chief, it was on editors-in-chief. Okay, so let's say it's the purse of my sister-in-law. So it's my sister-in-law. Now I'm going to make it possessive. Apostrophe S, and then purse. Remember, it's always going to be followed by a noun. Okay, then when it's plural, it would be the purses of my sisters-in-law. It'd be like my 2 sisters-in-law, okay? So I'm going to write the plural form first. Sisters-in-law. Now, I always look at the ending to see if it ends in S. Now, you notice sisters-in-law, the S actually is on the first word. So my plural form does not end in S here. It ends in this right here, right? So I'm going to do this, apostrophe S, and then I'm going to do purses. Okay? It's really important that you take it step by step because, as you probably already know, you see this in an incorrect form all the time. And so if you try to do too much all at once, it's really easy to get confused. Okay? So try to take it a piece at a time. If you get a sentence, for example, in the practice exercises, first try to decide, is the word singular or plural? Okay? That's the first thing you want to know. then, write it the way it would look, singular or plural, then make it possessive if it needs to be. But remember, if it's possessive, it's going to be followed by a noun. Sometimes you'll get a sentence and it'll have a verb coming after the blank, and that means it's not possessive. It's probably just plural. Like if I said, the neighbors are here. See, I wouldn't put an apostrophe on neighbors then because that's just the plural form. Okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Hopefully you've jotted some of the stuff down. And I need to show you how to do names, because it does get a little trickier, and it's based on pronunciation. So let me show you a couple things. Okay, so let's say we have a name like Jones. We've done this name before earlier this week. So if I have two Jones, like say Mr. and Mrs., right? It's going to be the Joneses. And by the way, you notice I said the Joneses. Anytime I put the in front of a name, that pretty much tells you it's plural. It'd be like the Ramirez's, okay? Or the Colbys. So the indicates plural. With names. Not with other things, but with names. Okay, the singular possessive. Now let's say it's Mr. Jones and it's his house. So we would say the house of Mr. Jones, or Jones. Now you notice it's one syllable. I'm going to do Mr. Jones's. You notice I added a unit of sound though? I added a syllable when I did that. Anytime you have a word that ends in S and you add another S, you automatically add another syllable, making it more difficult to pronounce. Now because this is only one syllable, it's not a big deal to add that apostrophe S. Now you'll notice in the PowerPoint, they show you two modes. They show you the formal way to do it, and then they show you what's called popular style, which is not as formal. I'm going to teach you the formal style because some teachers are going to be sticklers about this, okay? So we're not going to shorten this with just an apostrophe the way the PowerPoint does. I'm going to show you when it's okay to do that, okay? So let's say there are two Jones, okay? And to do that, we say Joneses. My plural form ends in S, so remember, anytime my plural form ends in S, when I'm making it possessive, I just add the apostrophe, and this would be like the Joneses' house. In other words, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, or Mr. Jones and his kids, or whatever the case is, okay? Okay, so one syllable. Let me do another one that's one syllable, and then I'll show you what happens when we have names that end in S again, because that's when this happens, and they get more difficult to pronounce. So let's try Moss, okay? And then if I said the Mosses are coming over, it would look like this, M-O-S-S-E-S. Remember that with names we can always add to them, but we can't change the original spelling ever, okay? Now let's say it's Mrs. Moss's child, okay? So it's the child of Mrs. Moss. So we would write Moss, then I'd write apostrophe S, and then here's my noun. Okay? If it were two people and it's their child, like the Moss's child, it sounds just like this, right? But the meaning is different. If I do this, that means I've got more than one person named Moss. My plural form ends in S, just like it did here. I'm going to add the apostrophe, and then it's one child that belongs to two people, so it's going to be the child of the Mosses. Okay? Okay, now so far we've only dealt with one syllable, so it was no big deal to add another S or another unit of sound or syllable. Okay? Now let's try something with more than one syllable. So let's take the word Jenkins. Okay, so like Mr. Jenkins, the plural of Jenkins. Now remember, anytime I have a noun that ends in S, how do I make it plural? ES, right? So that'd be like the Jenkinses are coming over. You notice I don't have an apostrophe. A lot of people want to put an apostrophe S and use that as the plural form. It's not correct, okay? Okay, now let's say it's the chart of Mr. Jenkins, okay? So what I want you to think about here now, you notice this is 2 syllables, Jenkins, okay? Think about how you talk. Would you say Mr. Jenkins' chart, or would you say Mr. Jenkins's chart? You heard what happened, right? I added a syllable when I did that. So think about how you say it. If you said it like this, Mr. Jenkins' chart, this is what you said. You left the 2 syllables, and because it was becoming more difficult to pronounce, you automatically shortened it, okay? But it means the same thing. It's the chart of Mr. Jenkins. Now, if you added the syllable the way I did the second time, then what you did is this. You did Jenkins's. So this would be Mr. Jenkins's chart, okay? Both of these are correct. Anytime I have 2 or more syllables in a name, we're talking about names right now, and it becomes more difficult to pronounce, I can do it either way. One book that's really good, it's like the Bible of Grammar, is called the Gregg Manual. The Gregg Manual will tell you that you should do it the way you talk. So if you just shortened it and said Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins' chart, that's the way you should do it every time then, because you'll automatically do it the same way if you do it the way you speak. Okay? Now if we're going to make it plural, we do Jenkins's, and you notice my plural form ends in S. So whenever my plural form ends in S, to make it possessive, I just do this. And then there are my nouns, charts. Okay? Hopefully you're following along okay. Now I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult now, okay? We had a 2-syllable name, but I'm going to give you a name that's a little bit longer than that. It has a little bit more to it. Let's try Ramirez. Okay? So if I say the Ramirez's are coming over for dinner, the way I write it, that's the plural, remember? It's going to look like this. Ramirez's. See what happens? Ramirez's. I add another syllable anytime I'm adding S to a word that ends in S or Z. And by the way, S and Z are treated the same way. Okay, so let's say it's the daughter of Mr. Ramirez. Okay, so it'd be Mr. You could either say it like this, Mr. Ramirez's daughter, or you could say Mr. Ramirez's daughter. Okay, you notice when you've got a Z sound like that, the tendency is to shorten it. Now if I'm going to make it plural, I'm going to write Ramirez's, and the plural form ended in S, so I'm just going to do this, and it's their daughter. Okay, how are we doing? Hopefully we're doing okay. I'm going to go ahead and erase this, so if you need to copy the rest of this down, I'd pause the videotape and then start it up again in a second. Okay, let's say that, let's say I have 2 people and they did a presentation together. So let's say it's Mary and Tom. So let's just take this all the way through, okay? Mary and Tom. Now, if I were going to make Mary and Tom plural, it's going to be Marys. In other words, there are like 2 Marys in the class and 2 Toms. So it would look like this. Okay? No apostrophes. Remember, we don't put apostrophes on nouns to make them plural, unless it's our mnemonic Maui for the capital M-A-U-I or lowercase letters. Otherwise, we're not doing it. Okay? But let's say it's singular possessive. In other words, 1 Mary, 1 Tom, and it's one presentation between them. Okay? So it's a joint ownership. Here's how you show that. Mary and Tom's presentation. Okay? So it's one thing shared by both of these people, so we just have one apostrophe there, okay? It's the presentation of Mary and Tom. Let's say, though, we were talking about something else. Maybe they each have a car, okay? If that were the case, and we're talking about two separate things, it would be Mary's and Tom's cars. Now, basically, this shows us this is separate ownership, okay? So separate ownership here. Joint ownership here. So this is when one thing belongs to both of them. Okay? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bunch of things on here, and I want you to try it yourself. I want you to take it all the way through the way I did, and then pause it while you're doing it. Write them down and then check your answers, okay? So I'm going to give you a few here. So mother-in-law, someone with the name Hernandez, how about something like, 1 day's vacation, 2 days vacation, so we're going to say day. How about something like louse? And something like sheep. Okay, so what you're going to try to do is first make them plural. So remember, that's like saying two in front of it. Singular is when we say one in front of it, okay? So you're going to write that. Then the next thing you're going to do is first write it singular, then make it possessive. And you're going to do the same thing when you do it here, okay? So go ahead and pause the recording right now while you try to do that. Okay? And then I'm going to put the answers. Okay, so hopefully you're pausing it right now. Okay. Hopefully you've turned the recording back on so you can see what the correct answers are here. So let me just go through these with you. So this is one mother-in-law, two mothers-in-law. But it's the house of my mother-in-law, one mother-in-law. So it's my mother-in-law's house. The apostrophe comes before the S right here, okay? Then if I have two mothers-in-law, okay, then it would be the houses of my two mothers-in-law. But then I've got, in order to show the possession, when I write it like this, it's going to be mothers, in-laws, houses. I know that sounds weird, but that's what I'd have to do if I had two of them. This would be like Mr. Hernandez, but the two of them would be the Hernandezes. This would be like Mr. Hernandez lawn or Mr. Hernandez's lawn. You notice I added that extra syllable. Remember, either one of these are correct. Anytime you have a name that ends in S or Z sound, you can shorten it when it's two syllables or more when you're making the possessive form. Okay, and it has to do with pronunciation. Over here, though, it's the lawn of the Hernandezes. Okay, so a group of them, two or more. So that's the way it would look. Day. This would be 1 day, 2 days. Oops, and I skipped that one here, didn't I? So now that you've got this answer, maybe I can erase this and put this in here. So 1 day, 2 days, but then it'd be the pay of 1 day, right? So it would be like this, 1 day's pay, or vacation, whatever you want to say. And then if it were 2 days, it'd be 2 days pay. And because days ends in S in the plural form, we just go like this, okay? Louse is 1 louse. Remember, that's the singular form of lice. This would be more. So lice is 2 or more. Then it's the legs of 1 louse, so it's 1 louse's legs. If it were more than 1 louse, we'd say it was lice, and we would say the lice's eggs. Legs, sorry, not eggs, legs. Anyway, so you get it? It's kind of weird, huh? Okay, then sheep. Sheep can be either singular or plural. You can say 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep. We have a lot of words like that, okay? So with this one, this is singular and it's plural. 1 sheep, 2 sheep. So it's the wool of 1 sheep, so we'd say 1 sheep's wool. We'd do apostrophe S because it's singular. If it's 2 sheep, we would say the wool of 2 sheep. And it doesn't end in S, so we'd add the apostrophe S. Okay? Hopefully you're getting it. Now what you're really going to want to do here is probably to make my chart and just give yourself a list of words to work from and try to get this clear in your head how you're doing it. Now when you take the test, and even probably the practice items in the unit, they're going to be in sentences, okay? So you're going to want to be able to decide how, what the meaning of the sentence is. So let me just show you kind of what this might look like. Okay, you could get something like, the blank are coming to dinner. Okay, and let's say I gave you the choice A, Hernandez, B, Hernandez's, with an apostrophe, or that right there, okay? Okay, so let me tell you what you'd want to do here. Since I have a verb coming after this, what does that tell me? It tells me it's not possessive, okay? Remember, if I have a possessive form, I'm going to have a noun coming after it. Remember, we had the woman's purse, the louse's legs, stuff like that, right? Well, this is a verb. So it can't be either of the apostrophes. Okay, so that's one way to weed them out. This just is plural. The implies a plural name. Okay, so the only answer I can pick is this one right here. So this one was not possessive. So you need to make sure that you can discern when it should be possessive and when it should not. Okay? So watch out for that kind of stuff. Now, if it had said something like, that's a U. What if I said that? The blank's daughter is here. Okay, there's a noun right there. It's the daughter of the Hernandezes. Then I'd have to choose B. Okay, so watch out for the noun. The only other thing I was going to mention, and this is in your review materials, so make sure you go over those, is sometimes you have words that we use that are not possessive. They're just acting as an adjective. Like, what if I said the mathematics department? Am I going to do this and do department? No. I'm not going to have anything there, okay? Or what if I said United States, sorry, there's a mosquito in here, United States Marine Corps, you know, something like that. What would I do here? I'm not going to make this possessive, okay? All right. So hopefully this will at least give you kind of an overview of what we're doing with possessives. And the biggest thing I can tell you as a suggestion is practice, 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 because it is kind of a confusing unit. All right? All right, good luck. Thanks.